Hello and welcome to episode 109 of Communicast, the podcast dedicated to enhancing communication skills. I'm your host, Scott D'Amico, president of Communispond. Today I'm joined by Fred Joyal, entrepreneur, founder of 1-800-DENTIST, author of Super Bold, and a speaker who teaches people how to build boldness as a life skill. Fred brings a fascinating perspective on the intersection of boldness and communication, especially how bold action can fuel confidence and elevate your ability to connect with others. In this episode, Fred explains how communication goes beyond mere information sharing, why boldness is essential in a world increasingly dominated by AI and remote work, and how practicing discomfort like role-playing or speaking in front of others accelerates growth. Let's dive in. Fred, thank you so much for joining me today.
Scott, really excited about this conversation.
Me as well. Before we get too far into it, why don't you just tell the listeners a little bit about you, your career journey, and the great work that you're doing today?
I started a company many years ago, evolving out of my career in the advertising business, where I was a copywriter and eventually, very briefly, a creative director. And I started a company called 1-800-DENTIST, which became, over the course of the next few years, the largest dentist referral service in the country. And we ran it for like 27 years. And eventually Google ate the business model. But over the course of that, I wrote a couple of books on dental practice marketing and started to speak on that. And so I was doing that circuit for about 15 years. I was also the spokesperson in the television commercials, and sold the business in decline. And now I consult with businesses. And also I am a public speaker on something that I'm very passionate about, which is boldness. And what I did is I created a system where anyone can build their boldness faster than they imagined possible, with these systematic steps that build your boldness and confidence gradually. Because a lot of people think, oh, well, I would be bolder if I were more confident. But what I've found is that it's bold action is what builds your confidence. And so I help people to do that. It's not a personality trait. It's a life skill. It's a learnable life skill. So that's what I speak on now.
Fascinating. And so what was the connection to the dental industry? You said you came out of copywriting and advertising and then built the 1-800-DENTIST business and then have done some dental business marketing. What was kind of the connection there?
You know, it was really just that my life was about communication much more than it was about dentistry, because we had to train operators in terms of communication with these patients. We ran a live call center. So we had a very sophisticated training program to teach them how to speak empathetically to these people who were apprehensive about finding a dentist. And then, of course, and I'm writing all of these television commercials and I'm in them. And then I'm on stage and I realized that the impact that boldness had on my life and how I took myself from a painful introvert into somebody who could be comfortable on stage in front of 5,000 people. I found that this thing was something I became very passionate about teaching people, because I spoke to a high school class of about 200, and I was telling them things I learned in life, my life lessons. And one of the things I said is boldness is a superpower, and anybody can learn it. And the earlier you learn it in life, the more satisfying and fulfilling your life will be, and you're better able to chase your dreams and have the kind of life you really want, instead of the life somebody else is going to design for you if you let them. And so the high school kids were like, yeah, that's great. How would we do that? So I realized I had to figure out how I did it. And eventually it boiled down into creating my book, which is called Super Bold, which teaches this method that anyone can start to build their boldness on a daily basis, gradually increasing it more and more and more. And that has had, the book has had such impact on people, and as well as the speaking, which is really just ramping up. I got involved in a lot of startup activity and got sidelined in chasing the speaking side of it, but the book's been out since 2001.
Excellent. So I will say I'm about 100 plus episodes into the podcast, and I don't know that boldness is a topic that we've talked about a lot about. So I'm really looking for the conversation today, because I think sometimes probably people misunderstand or misconstrue or even conflate what boldness is, and oftentimes maybe thinking it's loud or boisterous or over the top. But if you think about communication and boldness and what it means to be a great communicator, kind of thinking through that lens from your perspective, Fred, what does it mean to be a great communicator? What does that look like to you?
A great communicator is somebody who is focused on the clarity of what they're getting across, and are they, is their idea getting to somebody? There's a lot of people that speak, actually, and a lot of people in just simple communication, that they're in love with the sound of their own voice, and you have to pry the microphone from their cold, dead hands. And when I see great communicators, it's they're taking the time to make sure that the comprehension is there. Not that we can, there's a whole chasm between teaching and learning. And a great communicator is effectively helping people learn, not just teaching, not just speaking from a podium, so to speak, hoping that it's understood. They are working at being understood.
I think that's a very important distinction when it comes to communication. Is it's not just about getting that message out there into the ethosphere, so to speak. A lot of people confuse communication with simply information dissemination, because if it doesn't reach your audience, it doesn't have the intended impact that you're wanting, they're not processing, they're not moving to action, it really wasn't communication. So I love that you hit on this idea that really that clarity and making sure that you're ultimately getting to your audience and that they're understanding and processing the information is huge when it comes to communication. And if I think about the workplace today and the skills that are important for people to be successful, I do think boldness is becoming more and more critical, especially, and I'd love to get your take on this, especially in an environment where so many people work remotely. And not only being able to communicate effectively, but to be bold in your actions, in your communications, I think, to kind of help you stand out in your career and grow. So as you think about the workplace today, how does boldness tie into that and career success?
If you think about how AI is going to take over all of these routine tasks, you realize that your ability to communicate effectively, to create ideas, to create connection, will become way more critical than ever before, because the other stuff's going to get done by some form of robotics, whether it's AI robotics or it's actual robots. So when you're communicating to a team and trying to keep them connected and trying to get your ideas across, it's to me, it's one of the most powerful life skills, is to be able to do that. I mean, if somebody comes out of college and they can't stand up in front of a room and clearly communicate for an hour or longer, then they have wasted 4 years of college, because whatever the heck they're studying, their phone will do better than them. And so that's and it takes boldness to develop that skill, to say, okay, well, I've got to get better at speaking. So how do I get better at being in front of people? You have to suck at it. That's how you get better. You have to put yourself in low stakes situation where if your communication doesn't matter, whether it's role playing, which people hate to do. It's one of the best ways to get good at what you're doing is just a role play. That's how we trained operators at 1-800-DENTIST. They would role play as if they were talking to a variety of patients on the phone. And they wouldn't get on the phone until we felt they were ready. They would listen to somebody else answer calls, then they'd role play, and then they would be on the phone talking with a coach listening to them. And then after, and we would record everything. And so we would play the recording and say, listen to it. And this is how you get better at this kind of speaking, is record it. Don't just record your FaceTime or your little clips or your little walk in the park or your trip to the restaurant. Do an actual communication of an idea and record it. And record and it's not sitting in front of a computer. Your phone is set up as a camera on a tripod, and you are speaking. You are on your feet speaking, because what you want to do is you want to see what your body is doing. A great communicator is using her facial expressions, her movements, her pauses. All of that stuff is communicating. And it rapidly degenerates if you're not using that. You could have the greatest ideas delivered in a monotone. It's a snooze fest when that happens. You are not communicating.
You're speaking my language, Fred. The work that we do at Communispond is exactly what you said. You need to be able to see what you're doing, get your baseline, learn some skills, practice those skills along the way, continue to review, watch those recordings, pick up on things, see where you're doing better. In our 2-day program, you're recorded 5 or 6 times within the first hour. And at the end, you're doing a full presentation where you're learning how to use those gestures, your tone, your inflection, your pacing, how to eliminate those filler words. And it's about getting those reps in. And I'm a big sports fan. I see a lot of analogies between sports and work and effective communication. It's why you talked about role playing, where so many people do not like doing role plays. Football teams, what do they practice? The 2-minute drill. It's fourth quarter. We're down by 2 points. We're down by 6 points, whatever it is. We have 2 minutes left, 1 timeout. We have to go 70, 80 yards. They practice that. My son is in wrestling. He's a high school wrestler. They practice things where it's the third period. You're down by this many points. Okay, you're in the referee position. What do you do? What types of moves should you be thinking about? Same thing with any of these communication skills. You have to practice. You have to get the reps in. And as you mentioned, if you don't use it, it's just like a muscle. It's going to atrophy very quickly. So you want to continuously find opportunities to use those skills, whether it's in a formal presentation at work or simply out with your friends. Really kind of get in the habit of practicing effective communication.
And also accept the fact that you are going to be uncomfortable. Go with it. That's how you build your boldness, is you're willing to be uncomfortable. That's how you're going to get comfortable. The only way you're going to do it is by doing. If you try to stick to what makes you uncomfortable, you're never going to get better. You're going to feel safe, but if you're not growing, you're shrinking, you're dying, you're atrophying, as you say. And so this role playing is uncomfortable. Getting up on stage when you haven't done it in front of a group of people, you're going to sweat, you're going to get tongue tied. All of that stuff's going to happen until it doesn't. I don't get nervous going on stage anymore. I've done it 1,000 times. Was I nervous the first several times? Was I nervous the first time it was 1,000 people? Oh, yeah. Was I nervous when it was a 120-foot stage with a 60-foot screen behind me? Yeah. But I knew how to deal with it because I had worked my way up to it. So they didn't shove me on stage in my first month of speaking in front of 2,000 people. Got to control the dosage of your intensity, but you got to be uncomfortable. When you're doing the reps, just like in the gym, what's the most important rep? The last one, the one you can barely do. That's where all the growth happens. And if you got to be uncomfortable to get in shape, if you went in the gym and you said, wow, that was a really comfortable workout, guess what? You didn't work out.
You didn't
If you
get any
left the gym
gain.
comfortable, you relaxed. You went to a spa that just had a lot of weight machines in it.
Similarly, right? In that first set, you're not going to throw 500 pounds on the squat rack. What do? You're going to warm up. You're going to build to that. Just like with the communications, you're not starting on the massive stage. You're working your way up to it. Over time, you're learning new skills. Your form is getting better. Your resistance is getting a little bit better to it. And if I think about my daughter, she's a competitive cheerleader. She does all this crazy tumbling, back handsprings, flips. She didn't start there. She started on like a little wedge mat where she rolled back. Then they took the mat away. And so all these skills you have to practice and slowly build up to it. And as you said, you don't want to hop onto that massive stage your first go round. Recipe for disaster. So no, completely agree, Fred. As you think
Yeah, well,
about
and just let me finish, say that
yeah,
it takes boldness to ask for feedback. Critique is uncomfortable. That's the other
mhm.
part of it. It's the discomfort is doing it, and it's also uncomfortable to have somebody tell you where you're going wrong. That's how you're going to get better. Everybody gets better with a coach. So get a coach to help you speak better and take the painful feedback. Praise is nice, critique is useful.
And I would assume, Fred, throughout your career, boldness has been something that has helped you get to the point where you are today. So as you think about that, what is your, I guess, definition of boldness, right? If you were to say, this is what it means to be bold in your career or your communications or your personal life, might be slightly different for each, but when you're saying we want to be bold, what does that mean?
The simplest way, and it's not about being a show off or needing attention or all of those are insecurities. Those are very different things. Sometimes it's even narcissism. No, real boldness has a humility aspect to it, but it's more importantly, it's about never being the one stopping you, because nobody stops us as much as we do. People say, oh, it's my upbringing, it's the economy, it's the government, it's my parents, it's my my education, that's what's holding me back. It's like, no, it's you holding you back. It's you're unwilling to put yourself out there. Boldness is saying, I don't know how this is going to go, but I'm going to step into the ring anyway. I'm going to give it a try. And you've achieved real boldness when trying and failing feels better than not having tried at all. Because not having tried at all, you get a regret. You played it safe and you missed out on something. You tried and failed. You went, hey, at least I took a swing. At least I walked out on stage. At least I got up and tried to sing karaoke because everybody wanted me to. At least I, asked that person on a date. I asked that person to marry me. Maybe they said no, but at least you asked them instead
Mm-hmm.
of, I don't want to ask them because they might say no. Well, that's the same thing as them saying no if you don't ask them. So it's all about that, not being the one to stop you.
It's a great definition, and the idea. I love how you put out there that here's how to somewhat know when you have achieved boldness, so to speak, where you try and maybe it doesn't go right, and your mindset doesn't necessarily go to the negative. It more goes to, I tried it, didn't work out. One, you can almost brush it off, but also I'm assuming I'm learning from that. I'm taking this opportunity, and I've learned something from that to carry me forward to the next one.
Yeah, failure is to a bold person is information. It's a step up. It's not a reason to retreat. It's a reason to examine why. It's like, oh, you know what? I was talking to this stranger, and all of a sudden they glazed over. I wonder what. Oh, you know what I was saying? I started monologuing. I went off on this. I didn't leave any dead air for 5 minutes. That's why they glazed over. I thought it was being really interesting, but I never gave them a chance to say, I'm not so sure I care about your trip to Iceland, And so that's that's a failure, so to speak. But all it is information. Is like, yeah, I did. We get trapped in this. I want to be perfect before I try anything.
Mm-hmm.
Bold people know that that's one, impossible, but they don't wait to get there. They know that they're going to improve, they're going to perfect themselves by stumbling, by trying, and by harshly critiquing where they went wrong, either themselves or with a coach, and saying, this is part of it. This is how I get better, is by failing. So, we spend 12 years in school where failure is an F and it's bad. But as soon as you flip that script and failure's how I get better, you get better.
And there's a certain sense of self-awareness in there and willingness to reflect. So I noticed that during the conversation, Fred was just shutting down on me rather than saying, Fred was a jerk. He didn't like my story about vacation, thinking, oh gosh, why was that? And then realizing, I didn't shut my mouth for 15 minutes, or I was only talking about me. I wasn't asking any type of really deep questions, looking through your email communications. If you're not getting the responses that you want back, go through your sent folder sometime and look at how you communicate people. And it's going to give you feedback and information as to why you might not be getting the results that you wanted. So this idea with being bold is not letting other people hold you back, or not letting yourself hold you back, and reflecting, self-awareness, and really digging into those failures and looking at them as opportunities and information. I think you said failure is information, which is fantastic. Fred, if you think about your life and your career, who's been somebody that's had an influence on your communication style? Maybe it could be family member, mentor, colleague, whatever it is, somebody that you've kind of taken something from them and perhaps made it your own, put it into your communication tool belt, so to speak.
Years ago, I wanted to see if I could develop my singing voice. So I started training with this man, Roger Love, who trained all sorts of people in Hollywood to sing and sing better. And he's really a voice coach. And he told me the most valuable piece of information about speaking that I've ever heard, and I apply it every time. He said, speaking is just like singing, except you don't hold the notes as long. In other words, you do everything that you would do when you're singing. You get louder, you get softer, you get faster, you get slower, you pause, you use tone differently. You could be really low, you could be really high. When you do all of those things, you're interesting because of it, almost regardless of the words that you're using. And I'm doing this as I speak to you now. I'm pausing between words, and then I'm going to say something really fast. I'm going to say, if you're not doing this, people are tuning out. You're monologuing, you're monotoning them. That you got to give, and you got to pause. You got to give people time to process. And don't be afraid to repeat yourself. This was actually a failing of mine, as I hated to repeat myself. Then I started to notice these great speakers, and they would, if they had something important to say, they'd say it again. Now, they may change the rhythm of it. They may change a word or two of it, but they are going to repeat it. And they may call it back later again. So, Roger Love, he's still around. He still trains people, but that transformed my stage presence as well as, my impact when I was speaking.
When you mentioned about repeating yourself, it made me think of a prior guest, Jesse Cole, who's the owner of the Savannah Bananas baseball team. They're kind of all over with the wild way they've transformed baseball. And he said, leaders are great repeaters. If you have something that's important, you need to say it over and over and over and over again, and back it up with your actions. But yeah, this idea, important things need to be said more than once. And when you're talking about the vocal coach, it really made me think about a lot of musicians, and even I put actors into that same category. Oftentimes they are really strong communicators when you see them in public or doing interviews, because they know how to use their voice, the pause, the tone, the inflection, the pacing, all those different things you went through. They're using that in their job, and then they know how to pull it back out when they're doing interviews. And in addition to, oftentimes, especially with writers and songwriters, being great storytellers, which is another foundational component of effective communication, but they know how to use that instrument. It's very much, as you said, the same between speaking and singing. You're doing all the same things, just not holding those notes as long. I really like that analogy. Fred, as we're wrapping up here, two final questions for you. One is, piece of closing advice. What's one thing that people listening to this should perhaps start doing immediately to get on that journey of increasing their boldness, building the boldness, kind of the first step to take? And then if people want to connect with you, learn more about your work, get a copy of the book, what's the best way for them to do that?
So the whole thing about boldness, the essence of it is it's about doing things. Confidence is how you feel about yourself. Boldness is what you do. It's about action. So the best way to become better in front of people is get in front of people. Go to Toastmasters. Find any way that you can get up in front of people. That's how you're going to get better. And embrace the discomfort as you're doing it. But then also notice, wow, I'm not as nervous. Wow, my mouth isn't dry anymore. Wow, they really responded differently when I did this, when I did that. And it becomes fun because you stop trying to be perfect and you start trying to be better. So that's what I would tell your audience, and that's what you're teaching. And I think it's an amazing life skill that you're teaching, this ability to communicate effectively. If you want to learn more about me, my website is fredjoyal.com, Joyal. I speak to companies, I speak to organizations. I love speaking to colleges and high school students as well. I'm eventually creating a course on my book, but right now you can buy my book on Amazon. It's called Super Bold. That's one word. From underconfident to charismatic in 90 days, which of course is a very bold promise.
As it should be.
And it'd be kind of embarrassing if I didn't have a bold title. And it's in hardcover, it's in Audible, and it's in Kindle, and it's me reading the Audible. So, because that's another skill, reading your book. So yeah, check it out. I'm happy to help anybody any way I can. I think the book would make a difference in building your boldness muscle and pushing yourself out there to become a better communicator, along with Scott's help.
Perfect. Well, Fred, I'll definitely include links to both of those, to your website, to the book on Amazon in the show notes. So folks, as you're listening to this, check out the show notes for links there. Fred, thank you again. Really enjoyed the conversation. Wish you all the best and hope you have a great day.
Thank you, Scott.
Special thanks again to my guest, Fred Joyal, for joining us and sharing his insights on boldness, effective communication, and how action creates confidence. As we close, here's a reminder inspired by Fred's experience. Communication isn't just about being heard, it's about being understood. It requires clarity, intentional practice, and the courage to step out of your comfort zone. Be sure to subscribe to Communicast so you don't miss future episodes with leaders and experts redefining what great communication looks like. And if this episode resonated with you, please leave a rating or review. It helps others discover the show and supports our growing community. Thanks for listening, and have a great day.